So Mark and Dina, while we're waiting for some participants to join us, um, curious what product entropy means to you. What sort of things does it make you think of, or um, why does it resonate for you?
Yeah, I think of spaghetti. Maybe that comes from my engineering background, this concept of spaghetti code, but you kind of have something over here and something over there. It's called jumbled up. You don't really know where it starts, where it ends. Um, and even though it's delicious and in the end result, it's unclear where the boundaries lie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not a nice closed system, but rather a complicated set of interconnected things, right?
Yeah. For me, this is going to be really nerdy, but the word entropy gets me thinking about entropy in physics, which is where it comes.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we'll touch on this in the presentation, but the inevitability of that kind of complexification and loss of efficiency over time. And in physics, I mean, it has to do with like the eventual heat death of the universe, and everything will just turn into energy that bounces around everywhere. And then that makes me think of the opposite ideal, which is like a perpetual energy machine, I think, that loses
Mm.
no heat. Um,
Yeah.
so interesting to me that we have this kind of thing that's really, really big, yet also um, so relevant and applicable in multiple dimensions that we sort of are contending with, like chaos versus, I don't know, efficiency.
Mm. Yeah, it also I love the geek part. It makes me feel makes me remember, my days in college when I was studying chemical engineering and the equations that we use to um, calculate entropy.
Mm.
Um, and then it also, when I think about product entropy in particular, I just think about, suites of products that sort of get clunkier and clunkier as more additions get added over time or more acquisitions get folded in, um, and how that's a constant battle. All right, well, let's get started. Um, so if there's anyone who wants to just share with us, I said this before, but I'll say it again for anyone who just joined. Just so you know, we are hosting this on both Zoom and LinkedIn. So if you're in one or the other and you don't see all the comments or things like that, that's why. But we'll speak to them so you can hear what people are saying across the two platforms. So as we're getting started, I would love to hear for those of you who've joined us, just add in the comments where you are calling in from. And that reminds me, let me make sure that commenting is on.
Nice.
All
So
right.
we got New York, we've got Seattle, we got Washington, D.C. over on LinkedIn.
Nice.
We've got Prague, Redmond on the other side of the bridge here in the Pacific Northwest.
I'm super excited about the person from Prague. That's where my ancestors are from. So long long distance, but nice to see people from there. Romania.
Hey, Romania represent. I'm Romanian. Woo. Nice
Yeah, look
to
at
meet
that. Who
you.
knew we were gonna have our the Americans and their ancestral homes joining together?
Yeah. Enache, Laura, nice to see you.
And we've got someone from Calgary. Oh, I like this. Growing product entropy is like a booming city with no urban planning. Yeah, oh my gosh. I grew up in Massachusetts, and Boston being one of the older cities in America. has pretty poor city planning. And so that is something that I have lived through the pain of. We would always joke about how the streets were designed by cow paths and not urban planners. So we've got another person from Bellevue and someone from Colombia. Amazing. Super excited to have you all here. All right, well, why don't we kick it off and get started? So we're going to talk today about product entropy and how you can address it. The core contents are going to be, what does product entropy look like in the wild? How do you develop an evidence-based journey map? And how do we reduce complexity in product ecosystems? So that's what we're going to cover today. As we get started, I just want to share with you all, we are the Product Science Group. The Product Science Group helps teams use scientific techniques to develop validated product growth strategies and build the foundations for successful product launches. You can see here logos of several of the customers that we've worked with over the years. The Product Science Group has been around for 8 years. We work with startups and enterprises. What's consistent about our clients, our workshop participants, and our coachees is that they're always looking to really improve the way they do product management and product strategy. And you can find us at productsciencegroup.com, connect with us on socials. If you haven't signed up for our newsletter, we'd love for you to sign up for that. So visit us on the web. So who are your hosts today? So I'm Holly Hester-Reilly. I'm the founder and coach. I was formerly a product leader at Shutterstock after their IPO days. In the first year after they IPO'd, they were still going through a lot of growth. And I was in product at MediaMath during their hypergrowth phase when they were a unicorn. And I host the Product Science podcast. Now I'll turn it over to Dina.
Hey everyone, my name is Dina Levitan, based in Seattle, Washington. I'm a product leader and entrepreneur. I started my career as an engineering leader at Google and have spent my time recently working as a strategy consultant, startups, and now with the Product Science Group. Turn it over to Mark.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Enache. Most of my career has been as a product designer, but recently I've been working in a more hybrid context, doing product management as well. And bringing that human-centered perspective that I think is core to all the different disciplines and products to the forefront. So I've been kind of a bunch of different places. I was the former product design lead at Wayfair's ad tech department, and I've been at a bunch of different startups, helping them get different functions up and running off the ground. I'm excited to be here with you all. I'll turn it back to you, Holly.
Yeah. So we always like to start by sharing our product science principles. These are 3 principles that we have seen in action at all of the high growth startup teams that we've been a part of. The first one is evidence-based product strategy. So the key to that is that you have to have a product strategy. It's not just grow, it's something specific about who you're targeting and who you're not targeting and what problems you're solving and what problems you're not solving. And that product strategy needs to be based in real evidence. And then secondly, continuous discovery and delivery. So we need to not only deliver software every sprint, we need to discover things about our customers and our designs every sprint. We need to be analyzing our users, our market, and our product design, as well as the feasibility of the things we're building. And finally, the third product science principle is empowered teams. And in our minds, this is really all about sharing context. As leaders, we share context with the teams on the ground, and we give them the opportunity to make the day-to-day decisions. We just need to make sure they know the goals, they're aligned on the same place, and they have the context to make smart decisions. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dina.
Thanks, Holly. So I'm going to walk you through what product entropy is, what it looks like out there in the wild. At a high level, we know that entropy is a property in thermodynamics that just measures how much disorder there is. We know that entropy is everywhere, and it is always increasing in the universe. And we know that that's true for products and product portfolios as well. Ecosystems of products evolve over time, maybe through product launches, could be just incremental organic growth, new features, etc. Additionally, you can kind of have shocks to the system, acquire a company, deprecate a product, more. And eventually, if you're not intentional about the customer experience, it can become pretty confusing for users. So I'm going to walk you through an example that I lived through during my time working in the Google Apps organization, specifically the Google Tasks product ecosystem, which I find to be a good example of product entropy in the wild. So we'll start off back in 2009. Google Tasks began its life as a feature within other Google apps, allowing to-do items to be created in Calendar and Gmail. So that was the first time that Google really entered the tasks space. Then in 2013, Google Keep launched as a distinct new app. It allowed users to keep checklists of tasks, supported on mobile, Android, etc. And that was pretty distinct from the Google Calendar and Gmail ecosystem. Then, while I was working on the team, a company called Timeful was acquired. So they were focused on helping schedule smart reminders for users to help users get their tasks done with specific timelines. So what ended up happening with that company is that it was decommissioned that year, and similar functionality was integrated into Google Calendar the next year in 2016. So we saw that the sunsetting occurred as functionality was incorporated into the Calendar app. Then in 2018, Google Tasks was upgraded to a standalone product offering all on its own. Later in 2023, reminders became part of Google Tasks. So now that the standalone Google Tasks exists, the reminders could feed directly into that. And then back in 2024, Google Keep allowed an integration for Google Tasks where to-dos created in Google Keep could flow through to the standalone Google Tasks app. So this is an example of product sprawl occurring, product entropy. You have a complex product ecosystem, it's evolving. You need a plan to bring cohesion. It requires thinking about how the user is going to accomplish their goals in an elegant way. So you need to drive order from this chaos. So what are the impacts of product entropy? First of all, it's a big problem for engineering because they're probably putting most of their time into maintaining old stuff. So their impact is decreasing. The system complexity is growing all the time. They need to do a lot more robust testing. It's more complex, more necessary. They're spending all their time doing maintenance, or if they're not, the bugs are piling up. And you can also see that tech migrations stall, they get stuck, or they quickly grow in scale until that seems like that's all the team is doing. And morale can really drop in that kind of situation. On the other side of the house, we have the GTM teams who are spending too much of their time helping customers make sense of the ecosystem. And the implementation teams are struggling to follow through on the contracts that sales teams generate because the reality doesn't match the shiny brochures. So I'm going to turn it over to the audience here. How much pain have you experienced from product entropy? So on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is this is so bad, we're losing tons of customers and implementations. Engineers are quitting, morale is low. 5 is kind of, you see the maintenance cost increasing, resources are being spent on complexity, nothing's urgently on fire. And 1 is, I only have one product, I don't have an ecosystem, it's pretty small, it's managed, it's all fine. So love to hear in the chat.
We'll give people a minute to respond. There's also sometimes a little bit of a delay in us seeing the reactions on LinkedIn. But hopefully we'll hear from you guys about how much pain you're feeling about around product entropy. All right. Well, hopefully people will write in the pain that they're feeling. But Dina, why don't we keep going?
Sure. So something that can happen when teams are experiencing this is that executives might pin it on the engineering team and say, this is, engineering is not moving fast enough. Why can't we get things done? And it can be frustrating. But what we find in the product science group is that really applying more resources to the problem isn't the way to solve it. You can't just brute force it. And it's really about being strategic and putting in a product strategy to get yourself out of the quagmire in a staged manner. So how do you fight it? At Product Science Group, we focus on simplicity. How do we bring harmony amidst the chaos? And we found the user journey map to be a really good tool towards this. So let's dive in. How to develop an evidence-based customer journey map. Well, what is a customer journey map and why do we use it? The goal is to understand a journey end to end and to give empathy for what a user is trying to achieve and their pain points. It allows us to evaluate a current product's strengths and weaknesses. How are people using the product today? What do they love about it? What do they dislike? What brings them a lot of frustration? And how does that impact the business? So since it's a tool for communicating the customer experience, it'll include a few different pieces, which we'll walk through in a bit. The high-level steps in their journey, touch points with the software and services, how the customer is feeling, and it allows you to emphasize both the highs and the lows, so you can improve on the lows and celebrate the highs. There could be a lot of different ways to set up your journey. It's a really flexible tool in that way. You can talk about the current state, what you're seeing today, or a future state, your kind of ideal vision of what you would like the journey to look like. You can talk about an end-to-end journey versus segments of the journey, components of it. And you can use a journey map to drive towards an outcome. How does the user accomplish their priority jobs to be done? So let's break down the journey map. We have at the top the phases. So this is the customer experience over time. On the left, we have the dimensions, the key factors in the customer's experience. And then inside the content, we have observations for each dimension over time. And then you can use sticky notes to call out observations, insights as you see them. So this is the building blocks. And putting it together, you get your journey map. And you can see on the lower left, there's a plus because you can always add more rows depending on what you're trying to achieve with that journey map and what you're trying to communicate to your audience. All right. So who is the customer of a customer journey map? The audience can include decision makers, so those who are funding product areas or initiatives at the company, such as the executive team. Also the go-to-market teams, so those who are marketing to, selling to, supporting the users who are experiencing the product. And then the extended product development team itself, so the designers, engineers, researchers, product managers, those who are building the product to help them understand what is happening for the users and what the vision is. So I'm going to talk through, we're going to share 3 examples of crafting a journey map. And the purpose of showing this is to demonstrate how they can be created in different manners and also can include different elements based on what you're trying to communicate. So the first example is one that we created during a live workshop. And the sections of that journey map include the user actions. So what action did the user take? The user pains, and then opportunities. So looking ahead, a lot of times our stakeholders in these conversations have a lot of ideas and hard-won knowledge from being in this space for a long time that they can share to identify opportunities to make a difference for the users. You'll notice that in this journey map, there's color coding, and the color coding can be really effective towards highlighting other dimensions within the journey. So in this case, the colors were used to identify which system that the step was coming from. A second example is using kind of a spreadsheet-based approach. So breaking down the bullet points and turning it into a visual customer journey map with a few new sections, what they're doing, what they're thinking and feeling along the way, and then evidence. So evidence that we acquired from direct customer conversations. And this is really valuable when going to those stakeholders, the executives, et cetera, who may not realize how this is impacting end users and customers. So that's something helpful to include in line, as well as a visual. This is, a screenshot that can be just of the system that you're using itself, or it can be what the customer is doing outside the system that is related to the goal that they're trying to achieve to kind of help you understand the context of that user. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mark to talk about an example that he's made.
Thanks, Dina. Yeah, and the example you were just showing visuals is great because that helps ground what we're talking about in reality. That's really helpful for stakeholders to see, oh, that's actually our product. But the best evidence is by far actual sound bites or quotes or information or data you've gotten directly from users. So that's what I want to highlight here. Is, where is that evidence coming from? So what we're looking at here is the kind of journey that you take when you're doing your user research to pull that research into the journey map. So what we're seeing here on the left, excuse me, is a example journey map we did for a client. And I'm highlighting this one phase that's in two flavors, but initial setup. So when we look on the right, that initial setup phase shows up in the synthesis process for the research. On the bottom right screenshot, we have an interview transcript, and we use Dovetail. That's the tool that we use, which makes this process really easy. But whatever tool you use, even if it's stickies, you can do this as well. We've created a tag in our taxonomy of tagging for this phase, initial setup, and all of that highlighted text is included under that tag. So we've said this segment pertains to, the segment of the interview pertains to that phase. Then on the top right, we're seeing further down the line the synthesis process. When you start grouping together all the different bits of content that you've pulled from the research, we're actually able to group by that phase. So that gives us insights as well into what's going on in that journey through the user research. Then later, it's super easy to pull those bits and put them into the journey map. Even if you've had a first draft, like on the left side, now you want to beef it up with research. You don't have to do these in a sort of linear order. You can kind of mix and match, but yeah, this is the power of evidence in the actual map. Thank you. Next slide. No, thanks. And here, so particularly for the application of portfolio analysis, when you're dealing with product entropy, aside from the basic structure of the journey map that we've already talked about, what we found is super key to include in those dimensions is a dimension for personas. So who are the different types of people that are using your product and at what points in the process are they using them, as well as touch points. So touch points are wherever someone is actually interacting with your service or your product. So you're highlighting those moments here, and that helps ground it in your product or service. Overall, it's really kind of like a choose your own adventure in terms of which dimensions you want to include. But we found these to be really effective. Next slide, please. Thanks. So yeah, however you do it, ultimately you're ending up with a really, really powerful tool. So if you look at, for example, oh, and let me back up on this map, We're looking at how you can actually talk about different products as well. So we have these stickies for A, B, and C. We have different products, we have different personas, we have all these layers. So if we look at that sticky C on the top right that's being called out, that one insight talks about which actions both personas are doing in phase 3 for product C based on evidence. That's super powerful as a little insight that you can take back and use in your decision making or trying to get buy-in from stakeholders. Next slide. Thank you. So when you are generating the evidence, or if you already, or I guess, let me back up. So before you do original user research, you probably already know a lot about your customers and your users. So that can be a starting point for creating your journey map. You don't have to do original research to get started. Don't let that be a blocker. At the same time, you want to make sure that the evidence that you're using, whether you had some already or you're generating it on the fly, is validated. So how do you do that? So one way is through subject matter expert interviews. Those are internal interviews that are conducted in a user research style, but with stakeholders within your company. Stakeholders in the sense that they have buy-in in the product or they have a stake in the product because they're experts in the subject matter. So that's one way. Another way is to create a draft artifact. So that's again talking about like just creating a first draft of the journey map. That doesn't have to be perfect. You don't need everything in place. It's something that you should be able to do like in a couple hours and could do collaboratively as well. And this is really helpful. You can use this as a conversation piece to start getting people thinking and thinking particularly about the gaps and how do we fill those in. And then lastly, I guess I've kind of covered that. So that's what you do with the artifact, is to get that feedback and iterate and really make this something alive, as opposed to a tool that just sits on the shelf and nobody ever really sees again. It's really, really critical to make this artifact usable and used regularly so that it actually kind of makes change. Yeah, thanks. I'll turn it back to you, Dina. Yeah.
Actually, over to me.
To you, Holly. Thank you.
Yes. I'm going to talk about reducing complexity in product ecosystems. So basically, you've got a map. Now what? What do you do next now that you've got this evidence-based customer journey map? Your options fall into 3 categories. The first category is maintain everything. So basically, status quo continues, inertia wins the day, and you're not going to make it better, but you keep going. Option 2 is to sunset a product or multiple products. So to actually make the decision that some of the products need to be sunset. And we'll talk more about how you do that and what flavors of that exist. And option 3 is a hybrid approach. In the hybrid approach, we typically have a mix of some products doing some parts of either the customer journey or some parts of the user segments, and other products in the portfolio covering other parts of the journey or the user segments. So we're going to dive in, but before we do, I want to take a minute to say we did finally see the comments on LinkedIn answering our initial survey question. We apparently had a little bit of a technical snag where some were frozen until we reloaded. So I wanted to thank everybody who did write in telling us most of the people are saying, some number over 5. I see some 5s, 6s, and 7s. Michael says it ranges from 4 to 11. So a little spinal tap in there. All right. So let's talk about option 1. So maintain them all. What does this look like? So if we continue to maintain them all, we're going to suffer from lower engineering effectiveness. They're going to have another, more challenges with getting that engineering done. You're going to also continue to have the challenges with go-to-market effectiveness, with the implementation and the customer support skills. Those are going to be harder to be effective. Things will feel slow. This is kind of the key symptom here, is that people are frustrated with how slow things feel. But hey, no one has to make any hard decisions. And so this situation exists in a lot of companies, and it continues forward in a lot of companies because it's hard to decide to sunset something or move functionality from one product to another. And so our image for that was the Howl's Moving Castle, for any of you who recognize it. So the idea is sort of, just this monstrosity that has grown and grown over time. So option 2, we've got a couple categories for option 2. So you could sunset products. This is a good idea in some situations. So let's talk about that. So one option is you could sunset products without incorporating functionality. So what does that mean? That's when one product that you have is positioned to take the whole market segment, and the users from the other products can be welcomed into the first product. So this might happen when a larger company acquires a smaller competitor, and they really just want to take over those users and bring them into their ecosystem, but they don't actually need to make updates to their initial product to serve those users. So that's one example of this happening. Another subset of this is when the smaller product isn't worth the investment to maintain. So maybe that smaller product does have a differentiated value, and that differentiated value was appealing to the customers on that smaller product. But on the whole, maybe the market segment isn't big enough, or the pain isn't deep enough to drive a really interesting amount of revenue for the parent company. And so it's not worth the investment to maintain. And so there are times when, even though that value proposition was different, the parent company may decide to sunset the smaller product. So one example of this is WeWork and Spacious. I think most people have heard of WeWork, but let me tell you about Spacious. So Spacious was a startup doing co-working here in New York City, where the idea was that it was a more affordable co-working. Sorry, I'm getting feedback about my microphone. I apologize if that's causing any trouble. So it was more affordable co-working for people in New York City who wanted to co-work for less than WeWork costs. And the way that they accomplished this was through an innovative model where they opened up restaurant spaces that were not used during the day and were only used in the evening, and had people co-working in those restaurant spaces. I was actually a member of Spacious, and I used to use this service. And WeWork bought Spacious in 2019, and within 4 months, they had decided to entirely shut it down. They did not offer any competitive offering. They didn't make, a $100 a month co-working option. They just said, we don't want this competition anymore. We're going to buy it and shut it down. And that probably did make sense for WeWork, because Spacious was such a niche thing for a small market, wasn't interesting enough to them. So that's an example of sunsetting a product without even incorporating its value. Another version is to sunset a product while incorporating the functionality. So for that one, what that looks like is making the decision that the parent product, or the larger product, is going to be the go forward product, but the smaller product's functionality is going to be incorporated into that initial product. And this can make sense when maybe the tech stack of the larger product is more robust. Maybe the core skills of the company are more aligned with that larger product's tech stack. Maybe the smaller product wasn't yet built to scale. There could be different challenges that lead to this. But basically, the idea is that acquired or independent product has a significant value add, but we don't want to maintain its own tech infrastructure, and we don't want to maintain its own support organization. So we build that functionality into the core product, and we transition the users to it. An example of this is Dina's earlier example of Google acquiring Timeful. So, and one of the things that Dina shared with me that is interesting about that is that Google actually shut down Timeful before they had fully integrated the features of Timeful into Google Calendar. But they did ultimately integrate those features in, and they absorbed those users into Google Calendar. Okay, so let's talk about the third option, the hybrid. This is where it gets kind of interesting as well. So in a hybrid option, you do decide to continue maintaining the multiple products, but you get more streamlined about which products cover which use cases and which user segments. So you're going to maintain some functionality in one product and some in the other. And there's multiple ways that you may decide how to split the functionality. And so some of the ways that we like to do this are to split the functionality by persona or by workflow phase. And there's other ways you can divide it as well, but those are two of the ways that we've come across the most commonly. So let's look at an example of mapping by persona. So in the visual, you can see here, we've got personas, the green bar and the orange bar for personas. And what we have is two products, product A and product B. And in this case, we found that the green bar persona used some combination of products A and B initially, but then we were able to say, okay, we want to get all of the things that that persona is using into product A. And meanwhile, we're going to make sure all the things that the orange bar persona is using are in product B. And so that way, we're still maintaining both tech infrastructures, but at least the user has a cohesive experience because any given user is only using one of the products, and that makes their experience simpler, and it makes it easier for us to support and go to market for that as well. So one real life example of mapping by personas that I experienced was in my time at MediaMath. I worked at MediaMath from 2012 to 2015, which was during its hypergrowth period. And MediaMath was an ad tech company. We were rebuilding the front end of the platform. So we were doing a tech migration, moving from one tech stack to another tech stack and rebuilding our platform in that new tech stack. In order to do that, we had to manage multiple components of the platform. So those were our independent products. And those components there were several of them, but the three that I call out in this visual are campaigns, ads, and reports. So in this case, I renamed the segment of the user journey map from phases to components because while these sections of the product portfolio do generally occur in a sequence, they're not 100% in that sequence. So it was more about the component that you're interacting with than it was about the phase of the work. So in the case of MediaMath, we had campaign managers who were generally involved in all the phases, but most heavily involved in the campaign management phase, although they would also touch on the ads phase and they would definitely look at the reporting. Then we had the ad operations people who were really just working in the ads component. So they might have looked at the campaigns, they might have looked at the reports a little bit, but most of their time was in the ads management. And then the marketing leaders, those are the high level people in marketing who are looking at the overall picture across multiple campaigns, and they're looking primarily at the reporting. So that's the purple bar in the personas. And so what we did when we were working on this at MediaMath is we broke the components and into sections, and we built them one at a time. So first we built the parts of the product that were for the campaign managers. Then we built the parts of the product that were for ads. Then we built the parts of the product that were for reports. And then we ended up with the holistic experience, which was in a platform that had multiple products within that platform. So this is one example of what this might look like. It's kind of a complex example, but we wanted to share it so you could see different elements here. Another example that I want to share is mapping by workflow phase. So in this version, what you do is you say, well, the personas maybe aren't such a clean overlap or a clean breakdown of this. So we're going to break it down by phases. And we're going to reduce the need for an individual to come to a different product or a different piece of a platform in order to achieve a single job to be done or a single user outcome. And so what we do with this one is we say, okay, phases 1 and 2 are on product A and phase 3 is on product B. And so that's this example. Another version of this that also comes from my experiences was in my time at Shutterstock. Shutterstock had a lot of acquisitions. Shutterstock is a stock content marketplace that does music, video, and images. And they had acquired stock content companies from different asset types. So they had acquired a music content company, they'd acquired a video content company. And they, in the process of integrating that portfolio of products together, what we ended up doing is we looked at, okay, there's the personas, but they have some overlap in different areas. But what we find is that the admin portion of the workflow, so if a person is coming in to set up their account, to manage their account, and manage their billing, is usually significantly different from the image or music discovery and download portions of their workflow. So even though you might have the same person using the admin and the image discovery and download, or another person using admin and music discovery and download, it wasn't so burdensome for the customer to go to a different interface in a different place to do the admin than to do the rest. And what we usually do there is we say, okay, let's break this down across phases of the workflow, and we'll get the single phases to be aligned with a single product. And so in this case, we did that for admin and images. They were the main Shutterstock tech stack, and then music was a separate tech stack that we had acquired. But we did actually migrate over the admin for music into the main tech stack. So the last thing I want to say about these examples of simplifying product portfolios is that you want to use multiple frames so that you have a robust evaluation. So in addition to looking at personas and workflow phases, there's other frames of reference that you might look at it through, or different sort of angles you might take to look at it. So the first one is, I think, revenue. Satisfaction is what we had first. So satisfaction, so you might be looking at how satisfaction differs across different parts of your product portfolio, and maybe you would decide to sunset areas where that's lower and migrate that to other places. Another angle is revenue, so you might be looking at which of your tech stacks are supporting the most revenue and how that's working. A third one is bugs. We often look at what is the bug rate in different pieces of a product portfolio and help them decide what to sunset based on which things are causing the most trouble. You might look at the number of users who are using different pieces of your tech stack or different products in your portfolio. You also would look at the tech stack itself, and is there consistency across it, and what are we seeing in terms of how do these work together? How does the staff of this company able to build out these tech stacks? Are some of these tech stacks more forward thinking or extensible than others? Which one is stable and ready to be built on? And finally, pain points. What are the pain points that people are having at different angles, different steps with different products in your portfolio? So these are some other angles that you would look at your product portfolio from to help you analyze which parts to sunset and which parts to maintain. So let's talk about what kind of results you can expect. So we've got some real life client examples of having worked through simplifying product portfolios. In the first case, we were able to drive a 50% decrease in monthly bug creation rate in a product area year over year. So we took a product area that had a high amount of bug creation, and we helped them make a path forward to simplify, and it reduced the bug creation rate. Another piece was an 80% backlog. 80% of the backlog issues were closed 1 year later. So managed to work through and address many of the issues that had been around for a while. And finally, in a third example, we had happy users throughout a complex platform migration project. So what we've found in our years in tech is that a lot of times platform migration projects are difficult, and people have trouble, and the users aren't always happy during that process. But when we did this, we found that users were happy, and that they were actually really excited to use the new product as we built out the platform. So what are our key takeaways? Takeaway number one, product entropy is unavoidable, but you can take the reins with a clear strategy. Takeaway number two, strategies include maintaining products, sunsetting them, or a hybrid approach. So you've got multiple takes you can do. And takeaway number three, evidence-based customer journey maps give you the data you need to choose a path. So let's take the next step together. The first thing we want to share with you guys is that if you're interested in working through this kind of hairy problem together, Product Science Group loves product portfolio analysis. So we'll come in with you and we'll work on discovery, mapping, strategy, and an action plan together. That is something you can find on our website, that link that we just clicked, and we'll drop that in the chat as well. And then secondarily, if you want something smaller, that's an easier way to get started, the product opportunity workshop is a great way to get started with this kind of analysis in a smaller format. So that's a half-day workshop where we'll use what you already know to drive an evidence-based investment decision. And you can also check that out on our website. We'll drop the link in the chat. We'd love to hear from you if you're interested in doing one of these things together. Even if you're not sure if you can, if you have the time and resources to work with us, if this is something that resonates with you, we'd love to talk and just hear more about what challenges you're facing and jive on it together. So check out our website for more. You can learn about our services at productsciencegroup.com/services. And you can also check out our podcast and our recent content. We'll now turn it over for questions. So as we go to questions, I will say, I see a question already. So when is the best time to introduce the journey map if the current one is aged? The thing that comes to mind for me is like, have you ever heard the phrase, when is the best time to plant a tree? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the next best time to plant a tree is today. And so I think that's what comes to mind for me with a journey map. It's sort of, if you don't have a current customer journey map, the best time to do it is whenever you can, as soon as possible. However, what I will say is that there are a couple opportune times in the product development process. So at the beginning of a new initiative, you generally have more buy-in for that kind of heavier design work and research work. So that's a good time to do it. Also, if you are getting ready to launch and you haven't got an up-to-date one now, or if you're getting ready to launch a new feature or something, maybe you're building a strategy for your next year's growth, those are all times that you can leverage and say, hey, here's an opportunity for us to pause and update this journey map. Another question we got is, how do you keep the design team from taking 2 quarters to create the journey map? Ah, yes, such a good one. I'm curious, Mark, if you want to take that question first, and then I'll add some feedback.
Yeah. I empathize. Definitely been on those teams. I've worked with those teams. I've made asks of those teams. So I've been on all sides of that. I would say one thing is definitely to make it clear, excuse me, for yourselves, the asking team first, and then to the design team or whatever team's creating the map, how you intend to actually use the map. I think sometimes it can feel a little bit irrelevant or like not as much of a priority for whatever team is creating the map, when the worry might be that that is going to be an artifact that just sits on the shelf and isn't used. One real life example that I was working at a startup who wanted journey maps, and initially they wanted to invest in like a McKinsey to come in and like go through thousands of hours of customer calls and make maps. I was like, what are you going to do with those maps? And they were like, oh, it's like, well, maybe we can start a little smaller then and save that investment and figure out how we actually want to use them as a living tool. So that's one part of it. And the other part of it is to be collaborative, rather than just kind of giving it over to somebody else to do. maybe establish how everyone is going to have some level of role or responsibility to contribute into that map. Ultimately, these tools work the best when everybody is investing in them live and over a sustained period of time, so that you internalize it and actually use it to drive evidence-based decisions, as opposed to just like a one-pager that you can include in your slide decks.
Awesome. That reminds me of a recent conversation I had with people in the UX research community. And what they were talking about was how the research is all in service of making better decisions. And if you just go out and do the research for the sake of doing the research, you can get lost and take forever. But if you stay focused on, well, what decision are we trying to make with this research? Then you can really keep that more concise and get to the answers you need in a period of time that's reasonable. So yeah. Another question we got from Lisa is, we are swimming in metrics. Which one should we focus on for evidence-based intel? And so yeah, I love that question. There's always a lot of metrics to choose from. I think that at the end of the day, my favorite way to figure out what metrics are most important is, again, to go back to, what question are we trying to answer? What decision are we trying to make? So if we're looking at an evidence-based journey map and we're trying to make decisions about how to reduce the complexity in our product portfolio, we're probably going to be looking at evidence around things like, what is the revenue going through different products in the portfolio? How does the portion of users get distributed across the portfolio? But we also want to go deeper and look at engagement metrics and outcome signs of users achieving their desired outcome. So that's what I often look for is, what is the way that we can know whether users are achieving their desired goal, and which of our products are they using to do so? And I think that's a really meaty question that could be great to talk about if anyone wants to set up a time with us. And then another question from Anya. It is hard to sunset software. Any tips on how to frame this to leadership so they are okay letting legacy features go rather than refactoring once again? Oh my goodness, yes. It is so hard. One of the phrases I like that I've heard people use in the enterprise is to kill zombies. So you find these products that are zombie products that they're still going, but they're not really driving that much value for the enterprise. But they were someone's project at some point, and so it's hard to let them go. So when I was working at Shutterstock, I was able to get leadership to let go of an entire business unit that was not driving the level of value that it needed to drive to be worthwhile for the overall company. And the key to doing that was having a really thoughtful, collaborative process that brought the leadership along for the journey while we were discovering new things. So we would do research, we would bring back some of that research, we would say, hey, we're seeing this, we're seeing that, we've got these questions. What questions do you have? And then we would learn more from the leadership about what their buts and gotchas were. What were their reasons for thinking maybe this isn't enough evidence to shut it down? And then we would factor those into the next round of research we did. And in the end, we did about 4 months of deep discovery work in order to put together a case that ultimately did convince the CEO to shut down a whole business unit. And again, these are things that it's very hard to give sort of generalized advice, but would love to dive in deeper for conversations if any of you want to set up some time to talk. All right. I think our questions have trickled, so we'll be around for a couple minutes if anyone has any final questions they want to ask us. But I want to make sure to thank everybody for attending. It was great to have you guys here. I hope you found it helpful, and I wish you all the best. And thank you to Dina and Mark for your lovely work on all of this content and conversation.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thanks, everyone. Since we're sticking around for a minute, Holly, I have a question. I don't think we ever talked about this, but um, why did the idea for this might be for you as well, Dina? Why did the idea for product entropy pop up now? Why now?
I think for me, it's something that I've experienced in multiple contexts, different companies, and when they get to this level of maturity where, products are launched, but maybe, they're not thinking about the entire ecosystem, I think it's a common pattern. And so I think that's something that I've seen a lot and we can help with.
Yeah, I would second that. I think we were recently working on a case study that was dealing with post-acquisition integrations, and we've spent a lot of time on these topics over the last few years. And so that was sort of what drove the idea to work on, product portfolio streamlining, and then calling it product entropy just really spoke to Dina and I because we are, science geeks. So that just made us happy.
Yeah, right on. It was a great talk. I'm glad that it came up, and yeah, it's been happening more and more lately. Huh? Things are growing in chaos at an accelerated rate. So it's good that we have tools for how to deal with it.
And with AI, it'll only increase. The
That's
entropy
right.
increases at a higher and faster rate.
Yep.
Yeah. As creation becomes cheaper, the amount of things that are creating that complexity is just going to grow and grow. So, all right. Well, with that, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Yesenia, Marek, Christoph. I saw your comments on LinkedIn. We appreciate it.